Hello, my name is Tyler, and I'm doing a presentation on Arthur Andersen and basically why I consider him to be an ethical leader and someone to look up to in the accounting world. So Arthur was born on May 30th, 1885 in Plano, Illinois. His parents immigrated from Norway in 1881, so just 4 years before he was born. But at the age of 16, both of his parents had died, and he was basically on his own. And he was going to business school at night at the Kellogg Business School at Northwestern, and during the days he was working at a textile factory. So he was basically paying his way through school and living on his own. By the time he graduated, he soon after received his CPA license and became the youngest CPA in Illinois, and shortly after, by 1913, bought the company, the Audit Company of Illinois, with another partner and 6 associates, and for the next 5 years worked together. And then in 1918, the company was renamed Arthur Andersen and Company once his other senior partner left. I'll also add that after he graduated, he worked at Price Waterhouse for 4 years, and then went into his own, public accounting. And from 1912 to 1922, he served as the head of the accounting department at Northwestern. So he took on this role as an academic and as a practitioner, which at the time was not something that was very common. And it was something that would actually be questioned in the practicing world as to why he was doing that. But he believed in a strong educational background, which at the time, to get a CPA license, you did not have to graduate from high school, and he strongly disagreed with this, but we'll cover that later in the PowerPoint. So Arthur Andersen firm goes on to become one of the largest accounting firms in the world, and in 1953, Arthur Andersen was inducted into the Accounting Hall of Fame by The Ohio State University. So a professional timeline is going to cover a few of the same things, but some others as well. So in 1908, he was the youngest CPA in the state of Illinois, and in 1913 founded Arthur Andersen and Company alongside with his senior partner. And in 1915, this is where it started to get a little different. He had this belief that accountants and CPAs should be college educated. So he was only going to hire college graduates, and he was only going to hire the best of these college graduates. So he adopted a plan for recruiting college graduates for his firm, because he wanted to have, I suppose, the strongest firm out there and influence these graduates and his way of thinking. So by 1930, his firm had expanded internationally into Europe, Asia, and South America, and by 1932, the U.S. regulators and government trusted him to oversee the reorganization of assets of Samuel Insull's utility company, which was a big deal. And by 1938, he was offered a position as the president of the New York Stock Exchange, which he turned down due to a conflict of interest between that and his business, which was a smart decision then, but he would not have been looked at negatively for that, but it was in his values to not have those two positions. And by 1940, he opened a school for new auditors that were coming into Arthur Andersen, and this is where, auditors were, I guess, shaped in the Arthur Andersen way, where they all wore suits, they all came in looking the same, they all were instilled the same values and professionalism, and this was in part Arthur Andersen's effort to make accounting a more professional service. As doctors and lawyers, he wanted them to be up at that level, because at the time they weren't. But by pushing these standards out, other firms would follow, which would lead to accounting eventually becoming a professional career. And then by 1942, he had developed the management information consulting branch of Arthur Andersen, which would later go on to become Andersen Consulting. But this would lead to the 60s, 70s, 80s, the popularization of consulting in accounting, and it becoming a very lucrative service. So Arthur Andersen had 3 values, which were his firm offering a knowledge enterprise from experience, education, and research. So what was different about his firm was that he wanted his auditors, of course, to be educated and to be up to date with what was going on, and to constantly be researching accounting and looking for new ways to improve that were within his scope of values. So at the current time, it's been the view that accountants' responsibility begins and ends with the certification of the balance sheet and statement of earnings. And he wanted to flip this around and have that be the start of an accountant's job, which would later go into what he considered to be consulting. And so he believed that the quality of service rendered should be the most important thing, as opposed to whether an accountant's just making a good living. So an accountant's services should be valuable. The information that they analyze and have on a financial statement that's shown to investors through the New York Stock Exchange should be valuable, and a company should be able to utilize that information to better improve themselves. Therefore, accountants should be providing a valuable service. So next, his published works, he had about 5 published works. He wrote them early 30s all the way into the early 40s, and this just kind of emphasizes that his academic presence, as well as being a practitioner, which was not common at the time. So you just read through them: major problems created by the machine age in 31, duties and responsibilities of the comptroller, the future of our economic system, both of those in 34 after the 1933 Securities and Exchange Act. So he was obviously very involved in that and had ideals that he wanted to be impressed upon the career after the implementation of these standards. And then he wrote the present day problems affecting the presentation and interpretation of financial statements and a layman's speak. So he stayed very active up until his late career. So that closes the information on my PowerPoint. I just want to touch note that Arthur Andersen's importance upon the accounting community was to make it more professional and to instill values into accountants, as opposed to them just going to work, doing something that they didn't really care about, and going home and collecting a paycheck. So we can say Arthur Andersen was one of the main contributors into bringing accounting into a professional service, and I guess kind of streamlining the industry. So thank you.